Coming to you live from my apartment, it's Rob Has a Podcast. And now here's the guy who has to soften his approach every night so he doesn't kill you with his hot takes like Cody with the slingshot. I'm Rob Cesternino. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our Big Brother Battle Back Showdown Spectacular. Yes, and at this hour, we can confirm Cody is going back into the Big Brother house, and hopefully fireworks should ensue once we see when the live feeds come back on, and a lot to discuss here tonight, and we have a very exciting Battle Back Friday night crew. Thank you guys for joining us for this show, because I'm excited to talk for the first time during Big Brother 19, one of my favorite podcast guests to talk to. Give it up for Mr. Mike Bloom.
Sounds like the Den of Temptation voice just introduced me there.
Yeah. Mike, come to the Battle Back podcast. And also, I should add, Mike Bloom is writing about Big Brother 19 and doing exit press for parade.com. So a double tap, drink your pickle juice, Mike Bloom.
Yeah, it's nowhere near the face, please. This is the moneymaker. Thankfully not. Yeah, I mean, that sounds, it's as weird for you to say that as it is for me to hear it. It's something that I still kind of need to get adjusted to. I feel like I have the largest case of imposter syndrome in the world, and that I'm thinking, I can't believe I get to interview, Big Brother contestants, but this is a very pertinent podcast because 3 out of the 4 people coming back or vying to come back into the competition, I got to interview and get their thoughts of what would happen if they did come back.
Okay, so we will get all that and more, but first, let us bring in the man who has been bringing you daily updates all through the Big Brother live feeds this season, and I don't know how he's going to be because he had a rare day off of talking about the live feeds this morning. Please welcome in the host of the smash hit podcast, The Taran Show. Please welcome back Taran Armstrong. Taran, how are you?
I'm heartbroken, Rob. I'm heartbroken for Malcolm. I was really rooting for him, and he lost. How can Malcolm lose?
I don't know. I mean, it's been a tough year for Malcolms on 2017.
It has been. What's wrong with the world that Malcolms just can't succeed in these shows?
It's been rough all the way around. So
now, would you call Taran's podcast a billboard basher instead of a smash hit?
Yeah,
it's just as well named as the show itself. The Taran Show, Billboard Basher. They're pretty aptly named.
Yeah. So anyway, very excited to have you back, Taran. I'm sure it will be must-see podcasting when you are live on Saturday morning.
Oh, of course. Yes. We'll be talking all about, I mean, there's going to be a lot to catch up on tomorrow morning, so make sure you check that out.
Okay. Just to give a heads up there, what time are you going to be live? Noon Eastern?
Noon Eastern on the weekends, yes.
Okay, so be on the lookout for that. Should be a jam-packed show. That's going to be on our Facebook page on facebook.com/Rob Has a Podcast. All right, so of course, Alex Kidwell is standing by. Scott St. Pierre has another rare night off. So hashtag RHAP. We'll take your questions later on in the show. And if there are live feed updates, I'm not sure when they're scheduled to come back on. Taran, do we know? Are they coming back on now, or are they going to wait till the West Coast airing of the Battle Back Showdown?
I believe they're waiting until after the West Coast airing.
Okay. All right. So we will see how that ends up turning out. All right. So let's get into the Battle Back. And I guess let's start at the beginning, or let's start at the end with the headline, and then we could talk through how we got there. Mike, Cody comes back into the house. You had a chance to talk with him. What was Cody saying about potentially going back in?
So we saw a little bit at the end of his first eviction, first maybe 2, maybe 3, we'll see over the course of his game. But he did say, tell the rest of the house guests, look, I'm going to join up with Paul. We're going to take over this game if you keep me in or if I do come back. And, I think myself, in addition to some of the Big Brother community, are saying like, okay, you're just talking out your butt. You're not really going to do that. Paul's the guy that's been staring you down the entire time since the first HOH competition. But when I talked to him, it seemed like he was genuinely interested in really this idea of a sort of a beta, slaughter. They want slaughter. They want to join up and take out all of these other house guests. And the one he specifically set his sights on is somebody that we heard a lot of anxiety from tonight in the form of Mark, Mr. My head's always at 45 degrees in the DR for some reason.
He really did seem to be I really don't want Cody to come back into the house. Like, this is really not good for my game. Yeah, what is it? Is the diary room too small to hold Mark? Is that the problem, Mike?
This could maybe be a result. I don't know if he's been a have-not for any of these weeks, but maybe this is a consequence of the bad sleeping situation. I don't know how good these foam spikes are on one's vertebrae, so maybe his neck's just thrown off a little bit in a crick way.
I think Mark he's like a little puppy. You know, puppies just kind of tilt their heads like, oh. Like he's a little puppy, and you don't rile him up or he gets emotional.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see exactly how this plays out. Mike, do you get the sense that perhaps learning that Jessica was on the block this week was something that might have changed Cody's opinion? Again, we don't know when he did those diary rooms. Ultimately, does he do all of them after he gets back into the house? Does he do them after each competition? So that's really confusing in terms of how they put this show together.
It's a question mark, right? Because you would think, okay, we'll bring him in after the fact he gets in the house to sort of recap everything. But we got confessionals from all 4 of the battle back contendees. So you'd have to wonder, are they like, I don't know, throwing blankets over them and like sneaking them into the house when everyone's on lockdown to do diary rooms? I'm assuming there's a back way in. I'm not entirely sure when exactly the schedule is. I know that, Taran, you and Alex on the live feed updates were talking about times when they thought there might be a battle back competition going on. But I don't know. Also, if they're using the same set for the battle back, could that have taken place over the course of one night? Because they just decided to sort of keep Evictionville up. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah. Taran, were you tipped off how this was going to play out by the editing along the way?
Well, I was tipped off by there was actually some leaks that spilled what was going to happen.
What kind of leaks? Live feed leaks or Twitter leaks?
It was actually a Reddit leak. There was somebody who was on Reddit who was able to say that Megan had self-evicted before the feeds came on, and everyone thought he was lying. And then the feeds came on, Megan had self-evicted. They were like, oh, I'm so sorry. And this person came back and they said, guess what? Cody won the battle back and he's in the house.
Okay. Wow. Mike Bloom, what is Big Brother going to do?
About the leakers?
Yes.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think it's you can sort of stick your thumb in that dike, but the chances are another spring's gonna come somewhere far down the other side of the dam. So it's like a hydra. You try to kill one head and like 3 others come back in its place.
Okay. So Cody is back, and Taran, is this gonna be provide for some exciting feeds, or do you feel like that at the time that the feeds turn back on, that everything is gonna be pretty copacetic in the house?
I think it's gonna provide some initial drama for sure. It might be a rough week with Cody back in the house. However, we saw what happens when Cody is everyone's target. It just kind of everything settles down, and they'll just all agree we need to get Cody out. So hopefully it doesn't go that way. There definitely could be some drama, but I think typically with somebody like Cody, he's going to come back into the house thinking, okay, I need to play a little less aggressive.
The Cody and Jessica ride has been a wild one because they were sky high in week 1. And then at the point where Christmas didn't go home and Jessica is yelling at Christmas's face, and then they're ending up being punished, and Cody has to stand there. He can't play HOH. That might be the absolute nadir of the Cody and Jessica saga, ultimately resulting in Cody being evicted from the house. But Jessica has really rehabilitated her image in the house. She ends up winning the halting hex. Cody maybe has some time to cool off, think it over. Taran, they are, I think, in a fantastic position. Even if one or both of them end up on the block this week, they've got another week of safety due to the halting hex.
Oh, yeah. And the halting hex is very powerful. All she needs to do is say, hey, I've got a thing. You don't want to nominate me because I can just use this thing. It'd be a waste of a week. Don't even bother. It's basically 3 weeks of safety after
to be fair, Taran, all she needs to say is this.
Halting hex rise, eviction night dies. Halting hex rise, eviction night dies. Halting hex rise, eviction night dies.
Rob, is that better or worse than that troll poem we found when we were covering that Amazing Race episode?
Yeah, that's pretty good. I think I have it here.
Way better.
That Mike? It's way better.
Yep, that's those Norwegians. They certainly know how to do those hexes.
What did prickin' end up meaning, Mike?
NSFW. I already talked about thumbs in the dikes. I think we're good to move on.
I can see like somebody who won HOH going to Jessica and being like, "Look, I'm gonna put you on the block," and she just starts chanting that, like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
okay." Halting hex ride.
Taran, I was wondering if she could have used the halting hex when the House was voting to send in a champion into the battle back.
Well, why would she want to halt that one?
Because then the House couldn't send a champion into the battle back. They would have had somebody come in.
Or she could be a Kude Jessica, and she could have picked like Christmas to go in.
Yeah.
You should have voted for Jessica. that would have been great. All right, so let's talk this through in terms of how the setup went. So we were trying to prognosticate how it was going to go down on Thursday night. Myself, Alex Kidwell, and Steve Moses. By the way, I thought Steve Moses was great on the podcast last night.
He was awesome.
He really, he took a year off, and Steve Moses, I thought he was electric. Mike Bloom.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm happy to finish out Nerd Week on RHAP with Scott, Dennis, Steve, and myself. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I
we
want
gotta see if we can get Cameron by Sunday night.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to call it Nerd Week though, because I believe like RHAP's silent subtitle is Nerd Week, so it really is just sort of par for the course.
Hey, we live every week here like it's Nerd Week.
Nerd Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what Tracy Jordan tells me. All right, so this is what we get the setup of. The 4 people come back, and then 2 winners advance. And Mike, I was feeling good for Cameron when we saw that it was going to be this maze puzzle. He said he's been practicing his Rubik's Cubes, and 2 people are going to be able to advance here. So you felt like Cody was going to take one of those spots, but he just had to beat out Dominique and Jillian.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, technically, like, 3 if you count Dominique, Jillian, and also like the Christ-like figure on Dominique's shoulders that she's attributing to help her along. Even though Cody attributes his own win to divine intervention, so a little bit of conflict of interest there. But I'll take Taran's previously aforementioned Rubik's Cube take here. I mean, Rubik's Cube is all about patterns. This maze really wasn't much of a pattern. It required a bit more finesse, but I do think that Cameron, I think he had an admirable showing. Granted, we've only seen him competition-wise stand on a swing hanging from the backyard for a certain portion of time, but I think he made a pretty good.
We've seen more than that, Mike.
Well, yes. From a competition perspective, Rob, no one was competing with him in that regard either.
Sadly, the only 2 times we saw Cameron this season involved getting balls swinging left and right and trying to get them up and down in the right spot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, so like I feel like the whole Rubik's Cube thing, Cameron is talking about like, oh, I do Rubik's Cubes. This is going to be the best I've been practicing. Little does he know, the other person who said they're really good at Rubik's Cubes this season was none other than Cody himself. In his bio, he talked about doing Rubik's Cubes as well. Obviously, Cameron didn't know what he was up against.
Well, speaking of what they're up against, we got to see everybody come out in their intros. I thought one of the understated moments of the night, you had everybody come out. All right, let's welcome in our battle back competitors. You remember last year when Glenn came out, he's like, whoa, like flexing, and everybody comes out like, woo, woo, woo. And then and here's Cody.
My favorite was Cody's facial reactions as Julie is explaining the competition, because there's a lot of rules, but everyone's like sitting there really trying to internalize and pay attention. But Cody's just like,
yeah,
like he's chewing a nice piece of taffy that he's gotten like his molar that he's really trying to get loose there.
It's attached to some dental work that he's had. Yeah,
yes, resting taffy face.
Resting taffy face, RTF. So we got the introductions to everybody, and they went into it. And, Taran, we've just seen Dominique. We've been talking about Cody. Everybody's excited to see Cameron potentially come back. Jillian, really the forgotten 4th person involved in this battle back. And in true Jillian fashion, things did not go her way.
What was up with Jillian throwing shade at Cameron? Like,
problem. I don't know.
What was that about?
I think that Jillian was just like really annoyed that she was getting a chance to come back to the house. And then she was like, oh, this guy, we already got rid of this loser.
Yeah.
I love Jillian is definitely the Ringo of that foursome, right?
Yes. So even Cameron has eclipsed her. Here was Jillian during the battle back.
Jillian has to start over.
The bad news never ends.
Yeah, bad news never ends. No, the bad news would have been if Jillian got back in the house. That's where the bad news would be starting.
You never know, though, because I remember, so in preparation for this, I not only watched the BB-18 Battle Back special, the OG Battle Back, but I also listened to your guys' podcast. And I remember at the time when Victor came back, you guys were like, oh, this is the worst of all possible outcomes. Victor's back. What the hell? We didn't want to see him back. And Victor turned out to be a complete fan favorite, little fan favorite by the end. It's a little bit of a stretch to attribute that to Jillian at this point, but you never know what she would have done with her game coming in.
I guess so, Mike, but you're not really breaking any ground with that we're always wrong on this show. Don't come in with that hot take.
It's nice and cold as Cody's stare as he's trying to navigate that maze.
All right. So Dominique ultimately does not have a great showing in the battle back. She ends up going out. Taran, I did feel like that the editors did tip their hand that Cameron was going to be advancing in that first part.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I think everybody knew it was coming.
Yeah. Okay, so Cody and Cameron move on to the Slingshot Round. Taran, did you think that Cameron/Malcolm had a shot at the time that you saw the competition?
Well, I thought theoretically the spoilers could be wrong. He certainly took an early lead, or at least he said it was an early lead, but it was really a late stage lead that he just completely dropped, right? It wasn't actually an early lead.
Yeah, it was at one point, that Cody was retelling it, and he said it was like 7-1. It looked like it was like, 6-3 or 4 at one point, Mike. Did you feel like that Cameron was going to be able to pull it off?
I mean, perhaps. I mean, he definitely, I think the thing about the slingshot is that there's a little bit of a learning curve, as you alluded to in your introductory statement. You got to get the soft lob on it. And I think that Cody, with these like machine gun like arms, just went a little too hard, too fast at the beginning. So that's how Cameron was able to get out to a lead, and he was a little bit more consistent. But his problem, as he said, was in the holes that were left over. He was so erratic with his shots that he had like one over here, one over here, one over here. Cody had 3 at the very end.
7-10 split.
Exactly. And if there's one person that knows how to bowl, spends all his time in a bowling alley, it's Cody.
Yeah. So Antonio Mazzaro had a great tweet earlier tonight. He said that he's never going to forget that Cody had to go beta to win that competition. That he did not alpha his way through it, Taran.
Yeah, you got to take the softer approach. It's hard for Cody to learn. I think Cameron immediately was able to take the beta approach, but once Cody's marine skills kicked in, he was able to take the softer approach and snipe those billboards.
Yeah, he had to soften up his technique ultimately, and so he ends up winning. And he has a decision to make, Mike. He could do another maze, or he could do the slingshot. Now, both of them I thought really favored Cody since he had the learning curve. I was surprised that he didn't end up going with the slingshot because the learning curve seems so steep on the slingshot. And to me, it feels like you get one bad break on the maze, your ball falls out. Somebody could just completely go slow and beat you. Whereas he figured out the slingshot. I think it was going to take whoever he played against a long time to figure out the slingshot. Even if it was rotating, who cares?
I don't know. I feel like the scaling was a little different between the two, though, because the maze was just a different maze. And it's not like, again, these are like, gas stop paper placemate mazes. They're not like things that are we're not going really labyrinthian here. But in terms of the billboards, we don't know how fast they were spinning. That adds another factor into it that you might need to learn it all over again. And I think, I might be a little results oriented here, but he demolished that table maze.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Taran,
I'm guessing that the time difference between him completing the maze and Cameron completing the maze was probably longer than we thought it was based on the editing. He probably really crushed that and was like, well, I'll just do that again.
Okay, so he chose the maze race, and here's where things got interesting. The house finds out that somebody gets to come back. Taran, what did you think about the reaction from the house? Did they do a good job of selling something that they knew to be a foregone conclusion?
No, not really. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, like, they're annoyed about it, but they're not like surprised. They're like, "Oh my god, I could never have conceived such a thing." They're like, "Ah, damn it."
Really not thrilled that they did that. That was Mark. That was Mark saying that. Okay, so we have to elect a champion. Do we feel, Mike, that the House had a meeting about this, or they all just naturally gravitated towards Paul? He's our hero.
Well, I guess, Game of Thrones is really in the zeitgeist right now. First of all, I'm so happy they went by trial by combat since it has been banned in King's Landing. And we had, I guess, our own sort of Mountain and the Viper here, and I'll leave the spoilers at that. But yeah, it's interesting that, I like this idea initially of like, oh, okay, hopefully they don't talk to each other, so maybe we'll have a little bit more of a scattered vote. But no, very lopsided, all voting for Paul, except for Paul, who voted for Alex, I don't think had the best logic here with saying like, Paul knows battle backs. He knows of the concept of a battle back. His friend came back due to the battle back that he did not have a part of or even see whatsoever. I don't know if that's exactly resume material to get the job, but I guess of all the people left, maybe Paul had the best chance since he was doing the best at the competition so far.
Well, it was better than Jessica's logic. Her logic was, let's have the two vets go against each other.
Yeah.
Cody's not a vet. Why do you think he's a vet? You know what that means?
He has served our country, Taran. So
okay, maybe that's what she meant.
Yeah.
But then that's kind of insulting to veterans when you're calling Paul a vet.
Oh, that's a Survivor season in the making too. Vets versus vets.
No, Paul is a vet in the way that he's part of the friendship, just like Yvette from Big Brother 5 or Big Brother 6, Taran. That's how he's a vet. So it's a vet versus a vet. That's how this works.
Vets versus veterans versus veterinarians.
Yeah, there we go. Survivor 47.
Vets versus Yvettes. I think that is the new
everyone named
Survivor. Yeah, I think that we could ultimately make that happen. So we get Paul out there, and Mike, I did like this mano y mano showdown. Here is Paul. Here is Cody. You knew Cody was into this.
Jess is looking on. Everyone's looking on. It definitely is the battle of the alphas.
The battle of the alphas, Mike.
I mean, from a narrative standpoint, it really could not be any better. And I'll admit, like, I enjoyed this episode. I'm actually not that opposed to the battle back as a concept. I think if you're going to do a buyback, this is a fun way to do it instead of just saying like, hey, here's a, one crapshoot competition, or, I mean, I love Big Brother 3. I love me some Amy Cruz, but, hey, how many days theoretically would you go on PB&J if you were back in the Big Brother house? Okay, all of them, you'll move on. Those are less veritable ways to get into the house, in my opinion, than like really going through these competitions. So I was saddened that we only saw 3 of them, but I mean, it built out to this really fantastic showdown that, I mean, has been both literal and metaphoric the entirety of this game, and will be now that Cody's back in the game.
Mike, let me ask you, as a Survivor historian, why do you feel like the concept of Redemption Island and people returning has been really embraced in Big Brother, whereas in Survivor, there's so much more of a stigma to people who go out of the game?
It's a good question. I mean, maybe it's because of I don't know, sometimes the frequency of evictions as well, with the double evictions and the first night evictions, you're saying like, okay, these people might have been dealt an unfair hand, but they have a chance of getting back into the game. That sort of balances the scales a little bit. So that might be my leading thought. And also just because the seasons are longer too. I feel like sometimes when you bring in Redemption Island into Survivor, you say, well, you only have 39 days. How are you going to be able to, have 2 veritable buybacks over the course of one season? Here, since the season's 12, 13 weeks, you have a little bit of wiggle room where you can say, yeah, we'll bring a person back and have them compete.
To me, I think oh, good.
I think it kind of artificially creates an underdog where it's like somebody's coming back. They have to especially if they're battling their way back into the house. Like you said, Victor was not a popular house guest until he battled his way back into the house. And then people were like, oh, well, he's rootable. He's an underdog. I think every person that's come back in recent seasons has been some kind of rootable underdog.
To me, I think that the reason why people have not really embraced it with Survivor when they've brought people back, especially in a Redemption Island type scenario, is that I think that there is something to the experience of Survivor where you lasted the entire 39 days in this setting and you were able to not just survive the players, but also the elements, where I feel like that's not really part of how we think about Big Brother in terms of being able to survive the house itself.
Jess is looking on.
Well, Hey,
Get out of here, Cody.
get out of here, Cody.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Codus interruptus.
Yeah, divine intervention, maybe. But I mean, that's not really part of the game in terms of like the person who won the game, where Julie says, they survived 97 days in this house. It's just, you sort of like you make it to the end, and who cares if somebody was out for a week? Nobody's gonna like think twice about a winner who went out and came back in.
Well, it's interesting as well because it also goes back to this idea that Big Brother is really marketed as expect the unexpected too, right? I feel like Big Brother does a lot of stuff with bringing in a lot of twists in order to sort of throw house guests on their toes. What's a better way to throw house guests on their toes by saying your past is coming back to haunt you? We even saw the ramifications of it with all of the Mark and Josh confessionals this episode, and I'm assuming we're going to get a lot of them moving forward of like, this is my worst nightmare come true. Paul expressed it through a guttural scream, the representation of the sort of the ramifications this twist will have.
So pissed.
We've been saying that Paul has not been pissed about much. Now, Mike, does this have to do with Paul not being immune anymore? Is the whole thing just crumbling down?
When it rains, it pours.
It rains, it pours. Yeah, so Paul was really not happy about this. Taran, how do you think that this ultimately changes the dynamics in the house, where Paul is basically, I was going to say God to these people, but we've talked so much about God. But he's such a important figure in this house. And then to be humbled with a loss by Cody in the battle back. Do you think that this will change the way people view Paul at all?
I don't think it'll change the way they view Paul because he lost, but I do think that how he deals with Cody might change the way people view him, because either he's going to be on Cody's side and be like, all right, we're working together now, right? You're not going to come at me. Or he's going to gun for Cody again. And if he has to work with Cody, then people are going to be annoyed. They're going to be like, well, you were trying to get him out before. Why are you being such a snake and working with Cody? And if he guns for Cody, this is a dangerous position to be in because Cody is a very good competitor and he could easily get bit by that. So it's a tricky situation because he played it so well before and he's in such a great spot. And now this could totally unseat him.
Did you guys notice in the previously on when they sort of recapped the first few weeks when Paul, I forgot about this, when Paul entered the house, he yelled like, who bit the apple to let the snake come in? So, I mean, Dominique just has a really good memory, I think.
Yeah.
The snake metaphors were there from the beginning, and Paul is definitely playing into it. We were talking about this on the show the other night. Mike, did you like how Paul embraced the people are calling him a snake and dressing up as a snake for the veto ceremony?
I mean, isn't it one of the laws of power to create a spectacle, or the laws of Pauler to create a spectacle? I mean, I guess this is a way of doing. I think you guys talked about this on the podcast, so I don't want to rehash too much. But this idea of like, oh, like this is ridiculous, right? She's calling me a snake. I am a snake. Look how goofy I am, and simultaneously look how crazy she is. And I think on the feeds, everyone was sort of celebrating that idea. It might have come off very sort of like goofy and weird to us, but I mean, one of the onuses of Big Brother is the fact that there's such a separation between a house mentality and what we're seeing with a completely objective view.
Mm-hmm. Taran, so we don't know how things are going in the house right now. So give us your best prediction of how this plays out.
Well, again, there have been some spoilers. So, theoretically, I know
still coming out.
Yes, theoretically, I know who has won HOH. We can talk about that during the spoilers.
All right, well, we'll get to that in the spoiler segment. Mike, anything else about the battle back, or do you want to dive into some questions?
Can we gab about Julie's dress for a second?
Yeah, this is the second night in a row that Julie caused a little bit of a commotion on social media with what she was wearing. Last night, it was just jeans and a tank. But tonight, Mike, I, as the host of a Seinfeld podcast, was getting peppered with questions. Is Julie wearing the puffy shirt?
Yeah, I mean, pirates are back. Chenbot wants to be a pirate. I mean, I thought less puffy shirt. I thought more just a curtain. It just seemed like she Maria Von Trapped it and just grabbed the red curtain from the CBS studio and put it on her. But I mean, I guess we're on Chen Fashion Watch now. Is that sort of a segment you want to attribute to this podcast?
I should not do that. No, I can observe it, but all I can do is weigh in on was that a puffy shirt or not as a Seinfeld expert. And Taran, I'm going to say no. I don't think it was quite the puffy shirt.
Yeah, any listener to the American Ninja Warrior podcast knows I'm really terrible at noticing what people are wearing, and so I have no idea what Julie was wearing tonight.
Okay.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. I mean, she wore like sort of like a red Toreador cape that they used to fight bulls, and I believe that Carmen was one of the players tonight in the battle back. So it all makes sense from an opera perspective.
Is that all to get Whistle Nut all worked up at the rodeo clown?
Exactly. They really wanted to get Jason fired up to become the champion, but Paul was elected instead.
Yeah. Jason was seeing red when Julie Chen came out. All right. Let's get into some of the questions. Alex Kidwell has pulled tonight, hashtag RHAP. Susan says, it would be funny as hell if the house guest chose Jessica to battle Cody. Oh, well, she would throw it.
Yeah, that's the problem. There's no consequences.
That would be the issue with that. And I just think that they didn't know what to do. I don't even know if Paul wanted that spot. Taran, do you get the sense that Paul wanted to be the person to compete?
I don't know, because every single person voted for him, which kind of says to me that maybe he was like, guys, just vote for me. I'll do it.
Vote for your boy. I'll go out there. Yeah. I will win. I will go in the battle back. And don't worry. Yeah. Johnny wants to know, if Paul would have beat Cody, do you feel like it would have been a waste of an episode? Well, I mean, but it might have been a waste of an episode either way. No.
Yeah.
Would you have been up in arms, Taran, if Cody beats the other competitors and then ultimately has to lose to Paul and then goes home?
I wouldn't have been up in arms. If it had been Malcolm, if Malcolm had lost, then I would have been annoyed. But no, it's fine. It's the same episode either way. It's not that much of a difference. And there really was no chance that Cody was going to lose that having the practice.
Yeah, Mike, would you have been up in arms?
I mean, again, from a storytelling perspective, it could have been fun if he had lost, because that might have been Paul's, symbolism of like, hey, I'm able to conquer the demons even when they come back from the dead. It would put Jessica in a very bad spot. So I feel like the house could have been an interesting way as well, considering that like they might have had this brief taste of, oh, Cody could come back and cause chaos. That might have shaken the house up even if he didn't come back.
Taran, I'm really conflicted that I am dying to have Cameron / Malcolm / Carmen on the podcast with us, but he literally knows nothing about this show. I mean, he was in the house and he literally knows absolutely nothing, where we can ask him a question like, wait, that happened? Are you guys kidding? Are you serious? Are you serious about this?
Yeah, well,
on a show?
So Cameron, tell us about your experience. Well, all right. So every day, they brought food to my hotel room, and so one day we had roast beef. That was really good.
Okay. I was just eating every breakfast that I could.
Cameron should just do like Yelp reviews for the Hotel Ramada. That's probably pretty much his like value right now. I sort of see where you're coming from, Rob. Cameron sounds a little bit like Jerry Seinfeld in the confessional, speaking of pirate shirt.
Yeah.
It did seem like he hadn't used his voice in a very long time. His voice
just seemed as though for Carmen / Cameron / Malcolm, I do think that being in the house a week, I think would have been good for him in terms of like, I think he would have calmed down. I think he was just still too excited just to even get the chance to be back. Couldn't control it.
Here's my idea for the Cameron podcast. It's just us retelling the entire season up to this point and getting his reactions.
Yeah, we'll just go through the whole season.
Or bring him on and say like, oh no, Cameron, sorry, we're gonna have to cut you off.
For another guest that came in. Like, oh wait, hold on. There's a returning guest who's here. Oh my God.
That's Paul. Paul came out of the house. First Candy Crush, now RHAP.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve Cancel wants to ask, were you surprised that Jess didn't pick Christmas for the battle back, assuming she was under the assumption that Cody was returning? I don't think that anybody thought too strategic. I know Julie was like, oh, or you could vote for the person who you think will do bad in the competition. Yeah, and if everybody else in the house also votes for the same bad person, maybe that plan will work. Otherwise, you'll just look like the only idiot that voted for Christmas. It's a hinky vote, Mike. It's another hinky vote in the house. Exactly. It's Ramsey's. It was Ramsey's voted for Christmas in the battle back.
I'm actually surprised that Kevin didn't go for that, because that, again, would have been a fantastic idea of him like, hey, is who voted for Christmas? Yeah. It's a kid over there.
Right. I can't even believe it. This guy is voting another hinky vote around here. What is it? This kid, what is he doing? Okay. Abra, Who will be verified first, Cameron, Jillian, or Dominique? Okay. Taran, the Twitter verifications happen very quickly. Boom, boom, boom. Who ends up out of this group getting verified quick?
Cameron for sure. He was trending on Twitter, and half of the people talking about him were calling him Malcolm and not even Cameron. So that really says something.
I don't think it happens until after the season is over.
Is that a problem though? Because people are going to say like, "Oh, I see this, at Cameron Hurd, but isn't your name Malcolm? Is this a fake account with Cameron's picture?" I don't know if we can give you the verification.
Yeah. The way this works is that there's one person from the cast that gets verified. That'll happen when they get out. There will be people that are popular. They have pull. They get verified. And then everybody who's friends with that person gets verified next. So I think it happens for all of them. Maybe not Jillian. And I think it happens after the season is over.
Does that mean we're not friends since you're verified and I'm not?
Yeah. I had to call in favors to get my verification. I don't rate enough to once you're a podcast is really takes off. That's when it'll happen. Ari Ferrari, how much money do you think Cameron can get on eBay for his Battleback shirt, Mike?
Used or washed or unwashed?
I think that would be unwashed.
Oh boy, then that's going to increase it slightly for all those Cameron heads out there.
Cameron stands.
Cameron stands. Let's see. I'll throw in an opening bid of $45.
$45. Taran, do I hear 50?
I grab that for 50. Yeah,
50.
All right, 55, and no higher. This is what we're gonna bring. You're gonna bring Cameron out to the podcast, ask for his unwashed Battleback tee, and then summarily boot him off the podcast once he gives it to us.
No, Mike, you're being so mean to Cameron. Hasn't he been through enough?
No, I do love Cameron. I feel like he
definitely hates him in your interview.
No, he was. I mean, he had a very good mind for himself. I mean, I think he was like able to, when I asked him about him forgetting the snakes and the clues, he admitted like, "Yep, I completely blanked." I feel like some reality people might not necessarily do that. So I'll give him all the credit in the world. It just makes him a little bit of an easy target that it's hard to do the soft lob on Cameron sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Also, Taran, does he fall squarely behind Jody and Glenn in the power rankings of people that got screwed over? I know Glenn had a second shot as well, but it was an easier path for Cameron to get back into the house. I think that we could solidly move him into third in those power rankings.
Yeah, I think so. I think there was no way Glenn was winning the battle back, and Jody didn't even get a battle back. So he is in third, but it is still a tier of unto itself. So it's
Jody got the Raw steal, and then she got her name co-opted by Jessica and Cody, and then Glenn, and then Cameron Carmen.
At the same time, though, I feel like of those three, Cameron was the only one who ever had a real shot at winning the game at all. So, those other people, they were just going to be in the house for a while. I mean, granted, Glenn obviously mastermind would have won.
What are you talking about, Taran? I had the whole game on lockdown.
It's an interesting point, though, because again, I do feel bad for
Paul. He learned everything from me, Mike.
I feel bad for him though, because I think that I thought there was this really interesting instance of someone coming back, because not only would he be able to actually, maybe make some leeway in the game just because he is sort of an X factor, but this would be like the first tried and true instance of like a genuine intruder in the US house that we usually see in the UK house of, let's have someone come in like a third of the way through that hasn't been here before and have them work their way in the game. I don't know if Jody or immunity veto, Glenn would have been able to do that as well.
I bet if I was in that house, everything would be different. That Cody and Jessica wouldn't even be a thing anymore. It would be
Glessica.
Someone would have told him to hook up, and
they should totally hook up those two.
That's what the Glen of Temptation is, right? If you win the Glen of Temptation, someone comes in and is like, "You should hook up with Glenn." You've won the hookup hex.
Behind the back. It's a layup.
Jessica, please come to the Glen of Temptation.
And the losers get a note saying like, "If I had just gotten that one coconut in, let me tell you."
Yeah.
I had that game down.
The winner, they cut to it's Glenn waiting in the Den of Temptation to see who comes in to greet the winner.
It's like the Pandora's box when they used to have Mr. Spectacular come out. Surprise!
Nice. Behind the back. It's a layup.
Okay, how about Elena? Elena, will you come down to the Glen of Temptation?
Will anyone accept? Someone has accepted, I'm sure. Someone has accepted the temptation.
Raven, what about you?
Matt, I've got cereal, Matt.
Can you hear this? Is this on? Is this thing on?
All right. Keith Dixon, who's the best chance of getting further in the game between Paul and Cody? Still got to be Cody, right, Taran?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. That makes sense. Let's do one more question, and if we have one, or we'll go to the live feeds. Okay. Let's start to segue into the feeds. Of course, if you are going to bounce out and don't want to know who the HOH is going to be until Sunday night, that is your prerogative. But you can still catch up on everything when we are back on Sunday night after the Game of Thrones, the Snow It Alls. We'll be live with Stephen Fishback over on post-show recaps at 10:15 p.m. Eastern time. And then, of course, we will have our Big Brother Sunday night recap. And Big Brother Canada's own Karen will be joining us. What is it, Singbeal? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Karen is going to join us, and she could talk about that. Kevin Schluber.
Yes.
Can you give Karen an assignment secretly to attribute all the LFC some sort of punishment and to have her act out having to give out those punishments on the podcast?
Sure. She can. I might have to explain to her who the LFC are, but I will gladly have her dole out punishments to them. So that will be fun.
I liked the LFC back when they were podcasting about Big Brother 17, but
yeah, you know who I liked? Brian Lynch. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like this LFC. Okay. All right. You ready to get into everything? Let's talk spoilers. Okay. Here we go.
The Office of Civil Defense has issued the following message. This is
A spoiler.
warning.
A spoiler.
Warning means that an actual
Spoiler.
against this country has been detected and that protective action should be taken.
All right. Here we go. 3 nights of Big Brother is we start to lose it by Friday. Okay. All right. So, Taran, you are in the know, and we have some HOH action going on. So, what can you tell us?
All right, so again, take this with a grain of salt. This guy has never been wrong, so this is probably correct information. He was right about Cody coming back in the battle back. What he says is that there was another endurance competition. It was very much like the one from Big Brother OTT, where they held a sword up to a like suit of armor or whatever it was. Apparently, they had to hold some sort of disc against a wall, and after about 3 hours, Jessica is our new HOH.
Oh boy. So first let's give this.
So pissed.
Now, Taran, you were on this from a week ago where we were talking about going up on the block, Dominique and Jessica. You felt like the better move for Paul was to get Jessica out of the house. You felt like he got distracted with Dominique. Do you think that we are beginning to see the beginning of the end for Paul?
Very possible here, especially with Cody saying, I'm coming after Paul in his diary room. Granted, I do think there's definitely a lot of room for Jessica. Yes, for Jessica to target somebody like Josh instead. Apparently Josh was like trying to distract Cody the entire HOH competition, like being like making a real ass of himself, like Mike Dutz style. So, you know,
why so aggressive, meatball?
Yes. So, you know, I think Paul has some outs here, but he's very vulnerable. It's not looking good for him.
I love that Josh line. It sounds like some sort of like cut line from The Dark Knight that the Joker would say.
Why so aggressive, meatball?
I'm a human being.
I'm a human being. I didn't double tap. So, Taran, the door is certainly open here for the Paul back door, and that we could see the shoe clearly be on the other foot from when Paul won HOH, and then ended up backdooring the tandem of Cody, or leaving Cody and Jessica off the block, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It could play out exactly the same, where the feeds come back. We think Josh is the target, and then Jessica has a plan that she's not going to tell anyone about. And lo and behold, Paul gets up on the block.
Right. And so she doesn't have to use the halting hex this week. Where does jury kick in, Taran?
How many people are gone now? 4?
So we're back at 13 now.
Okay, so jury starts at 11.
So she's not going out this week, and she's not going out that week. Next week.
Because let's remember that Julia said, okay, now that Jessica took the hex, something interesting is going to happen starting next eviction. Maybe this means extended jury. Maybe this means final 3. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, well, actually, that's a good point, Mike. Let me bring up my... so every week I have been sending off a number of questions to executive producer Allison Grodner, and I've been getting answers back. And sometimes those answers have not been particularly interesting, so I have just posted them in the RHAP Big Brother patron group for people to see, and we get a kick out of how unhelpful some of the answers have been. But some interesting news today from my question to Allison Grodner. My question was that is the curse that correlates to Jessica accepting the temptation that someone's coming back, or in the battle back, did the battle back open, or sorry, did the temptation curse, was that the battle back? Or is the curse something totally different? She says the curse is something completely different and will be revealed next week. So there is still a curse to be unveiled.
Yes, and it will affect the whole house. So it could be anything at this point.
Yeah. So what do we speculate it could be? Taran, could this end up being a curse, a quote-unquote curse that ends up helping Paul?
Theoretically, I suppose that's definitely. It could absolutely be like a jury extension. We're gonna get Paul all season long now. He made jury.
Yeah. I mean, could the curse be like, oh, everybody is going to be eligible for veto this week or something like that? Something that could prevent a backdoor, Mike?
I'm not sure, because I mean, I guess I'm trying to remember if like the veto curses have been inflicted to like the same type of thing in the house, because you'd assume if it's an eviction type of benefit, then there has to be an eviction type of cost. But I don't know. We also got the veto, the ring of replacement, and just dress up like a frog for a week. So that doesn't really balance out.
Yeah.
It does make sense that it would be a double eviction the following week to say, we're stopping the eviction now, so there's going to be 2 next week to make up for it. So that's theoretically possible.
I mean, why would that be a curse? Is it always double evictions?
Yeah, that's the only thing. It's kind of boring.
Yeah, that's kind of boring. So we'll see. I'm hoping for the double eviction on August 3rd when we have our live show in New York City. Mike Bloom, you're going to be there, right?
I'll be in the audience cheering you and Johnny Mac and Eric Stein and the gang along.
Okay. And Taran will be there as well. Tickets are still available. About 30 tickets left for sale at robhaswebsite.com/bb19 live if you want to come out and join us for that show. We'll see. So, Taran, we know the HOH. We'll find out nominees presumably when the feeds come back on, right?
Yeah, presumably.
Okay. And then Saturday will be all about the veto, and so we'll have updates then. Anything else to report from the feeds, and then we'll go back to questions?
I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Let's check back in with what you guys have to say. John Densford, if Jess wants to get Paul this week, who has to be sitting next to him, Raven or Elena? Mike, if Paul is on the block Thursday night and potentially going home, who would have had to have been sitting next to him?
I mean, they've been talking for weeks about how, nobody's going to vote for Raven. Raven will stay on the block. So I feel like at this moment, she'd be good. I think Christmas might be good, too. You could give the excuse of like, hey, Paul and Christmas are one of the tightest pairs in the house. Let's put them up, though. I don't know. When those types of things happen, they tend to, that's how Jocasta went, right? They decide to flip things at the last second, and suddenly the random innocuous person that the main target's put up against goes home.
Yeah, that would be tricky for Paul to really campaign against one of his allies. But I think that's a good way to expose Paul, where if he has to really campaign against the people that he's supposedly working with and really show that friendship is a sham, Taran.
Yeah, definitely. I think it needs to be something like Paul and Raven, because then Paul will have to completely turn his back on Raven, which I think will rub Elena the wrong way. It will definitely rub Matt the wrong way. Mark will also be turned off. So all the showmances will, I think, side with Raven at that point. Alex will side with Paul, I'm sure. However, Jason has been like, I'm not so sure about Paul in the first place. I don't know if Jason necessarily sides with Paul. So I think it has to be Raven. You have to get him away from the showmances. You can't let the showmances support Paul. And if he's up next to somebody like Christmas or Josh or somebody like that, the whole house can rally around that other person. So you got to strike at the showmances.
Now, Taran, we've been pretty bullish on Jessica and Cody throughout this entire podcast, but what are the chances that Cody's return to the house ultimately ends up bringing up all these hard feelings from the first couple of weeks, and they're just back, especially now, almost worst case scenario, they're going to be up in the HOH room, they're going to be canoodling the entire week, not socializing with the rest of the house, everybody's going to get annoyed. Could this potentially end up being just a minor bump for Cody, for Jody?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be very similar to what happened preseason. Everyone is like super high on Jessica. They think Jessica could be our savior this season. They come into the season, we open up the feeds, and it's her sleeping in Cody's HOH bed. And then, we kind of liked Cody from the episode, but then we quickly fell off of both of them. Then Cody leaves. Jessica becomes the underdog. She is, again, our savior. And then she gets this temptation. But then Cody comes back in the house. The feeds are going to be back on, and they're both going to be in the HOH bed together again. Probably not socializing very much again, and it's the cycle. The whole cycle repeats again.
It's a sad story.
Yeah,
history repeating itself, Mike.
I don't know, because I feel like if they do get rid of Paul, it's weird to think about like social currency when it comes to fan interactions, but I feel like the community is starting to sort of sour on Paul at this point, that if they do get him out this week, they'll be like, Jody's, yes, Queen, they did it. Like, I love them. They're so great. And then eventually when the season turns, the fans eventually start to like bring them down to a happy medium. But I feel like even though they're still canoodling, if they're working towards a mutual goal that the fans want as well, that will still benefit them.
Okay. Let's take some more questions. This is from Abra. Who should Jess and Cody target at their HOH? I say Matt or Raven. Taran, if they don't decide to come up with a plan to target Paul, what do you think the move is? Josh?
Maybe, I guess. It's hard to say because I think Paul is definitely the right choice there, and you're going to run into problems. You can't work with Alex if Paul is still there. Paul will turn Alex on you. So, but you can't take a shot at Alex. She's one of the only people that might work with you. And then, then you've got the showmances. I guess you have to target the showmances if you don't target Paul. But still, I just feel Paul is the thing that's going to hold them back every single time. It has to be Paul.
Taran, how are Jess and Cody with Ramses?
They don't. Okay, so Ramses has put in some decent work over the course of the last week with Jessica. She's still not in love with Ramses. She still doesn't like him a whole lot, but I don't think they're going to go after him anytime soon. I think Ramses has done well with them, and this is actually going to be a great thing for Ramses that they came into power this way.
It's an interesting point, Taran, because I think what we're talking about with Jody, it's essentially what you were just talking about with Paul before in terms of working with Cody, in that you kind of need to take the shot, because if not, then people are going to say either you're weak-willed or, oh, you're working together with Paul, something must be up, now I'm more distrustful than you.
Okay. Let's do, this is from Pluck61. Now that the battle back might be an annual thing, why would anyone target a strong player before jury? Taran, does this find its way into the game that we are just going to be voting off sort of the cannon fodder early on?
I think there'll definitely be some hesitation next year for, should we target somebody that's a really strong competitor? Or at least I'm fine with targeting them as long as it's somebody else who's taking the heat, because this guy's going to come back.
Yeah. I think that's probably overall a net positive for the show, Mike.
I mean, yeah, from like a character perspective, it's great that we get to have more of the magnetic personalities come about, but we could also face a similar situation to, what happened to Laura Moret the first time in Survivor Blood versus Water, of like, oh, here's someone who's out of the game. We need someone who's guaranteed to beat them in the battle back. Let's send, one of our allies there to try to defeat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did that happen with Laura Moret?
Yeah, that's why they sent her to battle Brad Culpepper, because she's a beast at puzzles.
That's why they oh boy, I forgot all about that.
I mean, you watched the season sooner than I did.
I definitely remember it with Ozzy, where they felt like Christine Markotsky. Oh, she'll go right back to coach if we let her come back into the game. Ozzy needs to vote himself out.
Yeah, that's another example as well. So it's interesting when you watch the Survivor players kind of use the concept of Redemption Island and kind of weaponize it in a way. If this does become a recurring motif, you could see the Big Brother house guests weaponize it as well.
Yeah, and we almost saw that happen this season. They talked about, or Cody in particular talked about, like, Jess, if you have the option, send some girls out after me, because if there's a battle back, they'll be easier to beat. So
right. I think it might be a little bit getting into Lawan secret superpower territory. If you start saying, like, okay, vote me out, I'll go to the battle back. It's like, oh, sorry, no battle back this season. we didn't do it. Expect the unexpected. Maybe next year. Okay, a couple more questions. Johnny wants to know, did Cody coming back into the house help anyone's game other than Jessica? Taran, who else has stock that's rising because Cody coming back?
Ramses, for sure. Every week that Ramses stays in the game, his stock rises, and this is a huge get for him because he's been working on Jessica all week.
Okay. Anybody else?
What about Whistlenut? I know that, like, he was trying to distance himself from Jessica and Cody late into his game, but I feel like he's still friendly enough with Jessica that he'd be in that inner circle, right?
Yeah, and I do think this benefits. I know Alex was talking about, like, I'm not sure this was great for me, but it definitely benefits Alex and especially Jason, because they get to sit back and watch the warring, parties go back and forth between Cody and the Showmans. Hopefully they do, because I'm assuming that Cody still does not want to target Alex. So this is a great spot for Alex and Jason if everything remains the same.
All right, let's do one more. This is from Lauren. How's Jessica going to take it if Cody wants to align with Paul and Alex and go after the showmances? What do you think, Taran?
I don't think she'll care too much. She's not the biggest Paul fan, and she has been trying to put some work in with the showmances. She's talked to Elena and Raven in particular, saying, like, I love you guys. I still want to work with you. I feel like that will be her inclination. And if Cody goes along with that, I think she'll be fine. But she's also the person that just completely went along with what Cody did when he went off the it's just like crazy. So I don't think that she'll be too upset, but I do think they'll probably do what she wants instead of what Cody wants.
All right, Taran, this is going to be a busy weekend for you. Join Taran Armstrong live at noon Eastern, Saturday and Sunday. Any word on guests for the weekend?
I've got Liana for tomorrow.
I love Liana Saturdays. Those have been great.
Yeah,
Liana Saturdays. That's how it goes.
Okay, that'll be a fun show. And, of course, you can join it live and ask your questions on Facebook, or you can get those updates in the RHAP Ups feed or in our Big Brother Only podcast feed on iTunes. Of course, Mike Bloom, in addition to covering everything going on with Big Brother for Parade.com, Mike, you've also joined the horde of Game of Thrones recapping, and I know you were writing up a Game of Thrones recap for Parade.com.
Yes, House Bloom has joined the War of the 5+ recappers. I'll put like recaps in loose quotes because the way I'm doing things is I'm essentially writing them from the perspective of a roving reporter for the Westeros World News. So essentially, I take the major headlines literally from the week, since there are so many characters, and write up short blurbs about them. I had a lot of fun doing it last
week. Is it in the style of the Weekly World News where these really like outrageous stories?
Well, I mean, I feel like if the Westeros World News would definitely put out a story about the White Walkers, right, that nobody would believe, like those tabloids about the White Walkers, that's crazy talk.
Dragon Boy, right.
So I'm doing that on Parade. I'm doing Big Brother exit interviews as well. Due to the battle back, my interview with Dominique will be out on Monday, and moving forward, those should be coming out on Friday. I'm doing a bunch of podcasts in the meantime, doing movies on the Hamster Factor, Survivor Historians. We're making our way through Gabon. If you haven't finished Survivor New Zealand yet, which is understandable considering the final week is 6 hours of content, I covered that with Liana as well a couple weeks ago, so check that out. But thanks so much for having me on. This was, and probably not one of the most strategy-filled episodes of Big Brother, but it was still a lot of fun to talk about.
Of course, and always fun to have Mike Bloom back on the podcast. Also, yes, and speaking of international Survivor, Australian Survivor is right around the corner, and Nick Danza is going to be back with more Australian Survivor coverage coming up this summer. So that's going to do it for us here tonight. Of course, again, Sunday night. Again, note the later time. And if you are following the Game of Thrones, definitely check out Stephen Fishback and I come Sunday night where we recap episode number 2 of Game of Thrones. And haven't mentioned this in a while, but if you're looking for more Big Brother this weekend, check out the audiobook that Taran Armstrong and I worked so diligently on this summer. But first, a Big Brother 2 blockumentary. You can hear the entire first part when you go to robhasawebsite.com/BB2. Thanks so much to Alex Kidwell behind the scenes. Great job, Mike. Follow Mike on Twitter at a Mike Bloom type and at Armstrong Taran. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.